Good morning, everybody. Today is Monday, April 6th. This will be part A of lecture today. Don't forget, tonight we're going to have quiz 8. It'll be available starting at 6 to midnight, just like last week. Okay, here we're going to do something a little different today. Now that you got a pretty good handle on frame size and muscle score of weaned calves, remember M&L, SM&L, and muscle score 1, 2, 3, 4. I thought we could maybe go to the textbook, jump ahead a little bit, and go to page 151 to 155. So that's where we're headed. You can read it now. You can stop this and read it now, or you can come back and read it after we're done with today's lecture. Okay? So read the section called Marketing Decisions, and stop just before the next section, which is Establishing a Commercial Cow-Calf Operation. So stop reading at page 155. Right before establishing a commercial cow-calf operation. All right, so the first table I want to show you is kind of in the middle of that section. This is table 538. I just wanted to give you an idea. This data is a couple years old and it comes from NOMS again. I just wanted to give you an idea of how many folks castrate their male calves, their bull calves, and look at the calves that are either dehorned. Look at the calves. So we got calves. All male calves are born with testicles. We know that. So what percent of male calves are castrated, and what percent of the calves that are horned are actually dehorned prior to leaving the farm or ranch of origin by region? And so really we're looking at how many folks castrate and how many folks actually would dehorn if their calves had horns. So before we start, let me refresh your memory a little bit. The easiest and surest way to dehorn calves, or to make sure your calves don't have horns, is breed your cows to a polled bull. For example, like a polled Hereford or an Angus or a Red Angus. Since those breeds are polled, and because the polled gene is dominant to the horn gene, they only need one copy of that gene. So your cow could be horned, but if you breed that horned cow to a Black Angus bull or a Red Angus bull or a polled Hereford bull, for example, every single one of those babies will be polled, because the polled gene is dominant to the horn gene, and they only need one copy. So that's the best and easiest way to dehorn calves. So let me just throw that out there. So here we got a nice division of the United States. We got West, Central, South Central, and East. So let's find Texas. So we're in South Central. So they stuck us with Oklahoma and separated us out. East would be anything east of Texas, upwards to Tennessee and Kentucky. Central would be North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, and Missouri. And west would be Oregon, California, Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Colorado, and New Mexico. Okay? So now we know what West, Central, and South Central, and East mean. Okay, so let's look at, we're South Central. Okay, so we're in this category. So that means 66% of Texas calves, before they leave the ranch, are castrated. The folks that castrate less than that are the East. Okay, so these folks don't castrate. So they're under 60%. We're just over 60%. So that means that 42% of the calves coming out of the East are bull calves when they're sold. 34% of calves coming from Oklahoma and Texas are still intact. But you can see that parts of the country that do a really good job of castrating are the West and Central. Okay? Most of those calves are castrated. As is the same token, most of those calves, if they're born with horns or they grow horns while they're with mom, most of the ranchers will dehorn those calves as a way to add value. So again, we're adding value. We're castrating and we're dehorning. Whereas us and the East don't do as much dehorning. Okay? So if you dehorn your bull calves, make them steers, make them steers, and dehorn them, we're going to add value to those calves. So there's some really neat tables in this, page 151 to 155, so I wanted to share them with you. So there's our first table. So West and Central ranches do a better job at castrating and dehorning than South, Central, and East. Please be aware that the information of today's lecture will not be on the quiz tonight. Information from today's lecture will not be on the quiz tonight. Only things we talked about last week. Okay, it's not fair. Not giving you enough time. No material from today's lecture will be on the quiz tonight. Very good. Let's go. So here's what I really want to show you. This is what we talked about earlier. Okay, muscle score 1, 2, 3, 4. Frame size small, medium, and large. This is sale price differentials of feeder calves of varying types. So this is in the Southeast, this is in the Midwest. Okay? This comes from multiple sources. But I did want to talk to you about what sets the value of calves going to the sale barn. Okay? So let's do with something we know. Let's do something we know ahead of time. Muscle score, frame size, and muscle score. So large frame number 1s bring more money. Large frame number 2s bring more money. Muscle score of 3 means average. Par means average. And medium, so medium 3s are par, they're average. And where do we get a price deduction? We get a price deduction if our muscle score is a 4. We get a price deduction if our frame size is small. These are dollars per hundredweight. All you got to do is move the decimal place 2 over, and you see that a small framed light muscle calf, will have about a 27-cent per pound discount when it's sold through the auction market. Now this is looking at the Southeast and the Midwest, so we're probably not in either one of these categories. So this is like, you know, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and this would be Illinois, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, Western Tennessee, Western Kentucky. So that's not the critical thing here. It's just what I want to show you, what factors affect the value of feeder calves when you sell feeder calves at the auction barn. Okay, so in this particular data set, it looks like the buyers were expecting them to be polled or dehorned, so that means they just brought the average price. Whereas we see a penny to 2 pennies per pound discount if they were horned. We saw a tremendous discount if they were lame. And we saw a tremendous discount if they were sick. Well, we should not be selling lame or sick calves at the auction barn. However, things can happen at the auction barn sometimes, and a calf could hurt its foot or leg or whatever and become lame. But look at that severe discount. Okay, severe discount. Now, if we look at body condition is very different than fill. So let's talk about body condition since we know about body condition. So very thin, you'd be able to see all the ribs on the calf. Thin, you might be able to see the last couple of ribs on a calf. Average would be kind of a, you know, calf that has a little fat on him. And so he would be average or par. If they're, say, a body condition score 6 or even a 7, they're going to discount you, because what happens is that fat will be used by that calf for energy during him or her making her way through the market system and ending up at the stocker. So if you buy a fat calf, that calf will lose weight because it'll burn that fat for energy while it's being hauled, while it's standing all day at an auction barn. And so it tends to have it really behooves us to have our calves in average body condition. Okay, average body condition. If they're too fat, they'll get discounted, and look, if they're too thin, they'll get discounted. Here we got a little bit of bonus of 2 cents a pound for being thin. Okay, every time you see a minus, it's a discount. So let me slow down for a minute and tell you what we're talking about. We're talking about what can give you bonuses or what can give you discounts when you sell your calves at the sale barn. So the big items are frame size and muscle score, health status or being polled or horned. Now, there's nothing in here mentioned about being castrated. Okay? So castrated would be at least 10 cents a pound. Would be at least 10 cents a pound bonus for being castrated. Or bull calves will bring 10 cents a pound less than a steer calf. We got body condition. And here's a big one, fill condition. That means how full the calves are. Now, a lot of ranchers think they're smart and they'll let their calves fill up on water and they'll let their calves fill up on hay before they take them to the sale barn, thinking that that added weight they're going to get paid for. And so that's what this means, full, and this is tanked. Tanked would be full of feed and full of water. Full is probably just full of feed or full of water. Average fill condition is on par. And you can see for the most part, if those calves are a little shrunk in, meaning they haven't had, full feed for a day or two, they're going to get for the most part a bonus. They're going to get well, except for here, they don't like them here. So I don't know what's going on here. Okay, so in the Midwest they just want them to be average fill, but those calf buyers can tell if those calves are full or not. So definitely a calf buyer at an auction barn can tell if a calf is gaunt, because right behind their ribs they'll be sunken in a little bit, meaning they're not full, they're not tanked. Or if you sell a calf that's full of feed, full of water, that belly's going to be full, those order buyers will know, and they may take a nickel to 10 cents a pound off of those prices, because they know that those calves are going to poop and pee for the next 24 to 48 hours. And so those calves are going to get lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. We call that shrink. You buy a calf 500 pounds, 2 days later, if he hasn't eaten and drank, he'll weigh about 475. So you just lost 25 pounds. So those buyers know. So the take-home message here is it pays to have calves in average fill condition. In other words, they got something to eat the day before and they got to drink water. That's not a problem, but don't fill them up. Okay? And you can hold them off of feed for a little bit, or if they stand at the sale barn for a day, they're going to be shrunk. They're going to be shrunk a little bit, and that should bring more money. Buyers like muscle scores of 1 and 2. They can live with 3s. They don't like 4s. Calf buyers like large and medium frame calves. They don't like small frame calves. They like polled calves over horned calves. They don't like lame calves, and they don't like sick calves because they're going to have to be doctored, and we may have to wait and babysit those calves, and so it's not a good idea to put lame and sick calves on a truck. So some other buyer will buy them and try to doctor these calves back to normal health. Body condition. They don't like very thin. They like thin to average, and they don't like fleshy or fat. That's because when those calves go through the auction barn and you buy them, if they're fat and tanked, they will actually lose weight over the next 24 to 48 hours, and that's money being wasted. So you bought a calf that he weighs 500 pounds, and all of a sudden you get him home and you get him out on your stocker operation, and now he weighs 450. That's what they don't want to see. They don't want to pay for lost weight. Okay? They don't want to pay for lost weight. So those are just some tips that you can think about when you sell your calves. Look for where the buyers are paying bonuses. That's pluses, not getting discounts. Okay? That's what this is shown in this table. So I wanted to share that with you to make it clear to you that it's very hard to fool a calf buyer at a sale barn. Those guys and gals do that for a living, and they're pretty sharp at what they do. Continuing on page 153, there's a pay table 539, marketing programs and value-added strategy engagement by herd size for at least part of the calf crop. So this is kind of shows you broken down by herd size. Again, this is USDA NOMS data. So we got 1 to 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 200, and over 200. So how many calves, and this is percentage, okay, how many calves are being marketed through the different types of value-added programs. Well, easily we can see that about 70% of all calves coming off of all ranches in this data set are not in a value-added program. 70% are not in a value-added program. Less than 1% are what? Organic. About 25% are natural. So 25% of the calves across the board are in sort of some natural program. When it comes to breed influenced or agent source verification, we may be talking about certified Angus beef, we may be talking about certified Hereford beef, we may be talking about Nolan Ryan beef, where he likes to buy Beefmaster steers and heifers coming out of a feed yard for his branded beef program. You can see that for the smaller ranches, it's less than 20%, but the big ranches, it's upwards of 30% could be certified Angus beef or some breed influence value-added program. And the same for third-party agent source verification. Now, you don't have to be natural, you don't have to be organic to be third-party verified. You do not have to be. Some of the bigger ranches like to get their veterinarian to verify the age and the source of their calves as they sell them in truckload lots, because that adds value to them. And so the big ranches are taking advantage of this. The big ranches are taking advantage of organic. So you can see, if we look at the big boys, okay, and girls, they're taking advantage of these value-added programs. Okay, so these do not add up to 100%. So the bigger ranches are taking advantage of it, but across the board you can see that most folks are selling their calves through the conventional means. That means taking them to the auction barn or selling them on video auction, where they're not necessarily organic or natural or agent source verified or are part of a breed influence program like certified Angus beef. Okay, so you see breed influenced marketing program, think of certified Angus beef. Agent source verification means you just verified that when the calves were born and what ranch they came from. We all know about natural and we all know about organic. And conventional means when Dr. Stenko takes his 3 calves to the auction barn in 3 Rivers and sells them. Okay? So there's a lot of folks that do that. There's a lot of folks that do that. Okay? All right. We always talk about providing information to our buyers is important. Figure 513 is NOMS data again. Your author loves NOMS data because it's very valuable. This is a percent of herds providing information to down channel users and percentage participating in forward contracting pricing arrangements. So what is forward contracting? Forward contracting means, let's say we had a stocker operator that came to King Ranch and said, King Ranch, I will buy 1,000 American red 500 to 600 pound steer calves from you next fall, and if you can guarantee me that, I will pay you 5 cents above market value and I'll come and pick them up. That's forward contracting. So I'm a stocker guy in South Texas. I call up King Ranch and I say, King Ranch, I need some stocker calves next fall. So when you wean calves in September, I will take 1,000 head of American red calves, steer calves. I don't want any heifers. I want steer calves. I want them weighing between 500 and 600 pounds. I want them to be healthy. I'll take all you got. I'll come and get them. Will you promise me to sell them if I pay you 5 cents above market price, current market price in September? That's forward contracting. Okay? Information to buyers. This is what I talked to you about earlier about telling the auction barn owner or whoever is buying your calves that my calves have been pre-weaned. They're all from the same ranch. They're all from this 3 different bulls. They all been vaccinated. They all been pre-weaned for 45 days. Whatever, you're providing information to the buyer. So you can see a lot more folks provide information to buyers versus those ranches that are involved with forward contracting. But once again, look who's doing it. Look who's providing information. Look who's using forward pricing. It's the bigger ranches, because the bigger ranches have more calves to sell. They can provide really good information. They could provide third-party verification of age and source. They might be part of a branded beef program like Certified Angus Beef. Okay, the big ranches are doing this. So that kind of tells us little guys, we need to do as much as we can, but we may not be in a position to do it as well as the big ranches. So I'm going to use our neighbors to the west. This is King Ranch, for example. So that means that King Ranch could be, I'm not saying they are, but they could be supplying information to their buyers 74% of the time. So 74% of their calves could come with good information, and 15% of their calves could be sold on forward contracting price. So we have a price arrangement at a later date. Okay, so it's just some good information here showing us how we can help market our calves and who is doing it. And the larger ranches seem to be doing it at a better, higher rate than the smaller ranches. Okay, so two different things: informing our buyers about how we produce these calves, and maybe possibly selling them for a pre-negotiated price to be done at a later date. Okay, all right, I believe this is the last slide. I think no, it's not, so hang with me. This is on page 154. This is on page 154. Okay, so this is looking at table 5.4. How long do calves remain on site following weaning prior to transport for sale or to a customer? Okay. Length of time calves remain on a site following weaning prior to transport for sale or customer. Okay. Percent of calves. So this is big ranch sizes. This is ranch sizes again. Little ranches, big ranches. Okay. So what does it mean? Days. Well, that means 0 days means we gathered our cows and calves, we separated the cows from the calves, we loaded the calves on the trailer and took them to the auction barn or took them to the new customer. So over half the calves from small ranches are weaned the day they're sold. And that's also true for ranches of cows from 50 to 100. Okay? A little bit less for the larger ranches. A little bit less for the larger ranches. Okay? How many ranches or how many calves are kept for a month? 15%, 20%, 20%, 12%. How many calves are kept for 2 months? 12%, 13%, 26%, 16%. More than 2 months, up to 3. Pretty long time, pretty long time. So not many folks keep calves for 3 months. That's what you can see here. And really, to be honest with you, not many calves are kept more than 2 months. Not many calves are kept more than 2 months. But you can see the big operators, the 200 mama cow and larger operations. You know, you can add these up, and that's about 30%. And that's 34%, so it's about 50-50. Half wean the same day, sell the same day they wean. Half keep them a little bit longer. Here it's kind of spread equally between those three categories. Wean them and sell them. Wean them and then keep them for a month. Wean them and maybe keep them for 2 months. So definitely the larger ranches tend to keep calves a little bit longer, and so that means they would be pre-weaned. Okay, they would be pre-weaned. Okay, before time of sale. And the term we use for that, if you pre-wean calves before you sell them, so you wean them and you keep them, and you may vaccinate them again, that whole process is called preconditioning. So you're preconditioning the calves to do well on a stocker operation and then into the feed yard. That's called preconditioned calves. Where we can see the smaller ranches, what do? They tend to wean the calves and then sell them the same day, or they keep them less than a month. So I'm not saying they don't do it, but most do not, and very few wean their calves and keep them for less than a month and then sell them. Okay? So I think this is pretty interesting. I think this is pretty interesting to look at. Small ranches just don't have the land or probably the facilities or the time to precondition calves. Whereas larger ranches, it's kind of a mixed bag, but some wean and sell the same day, no doubt. Some will wean and keep for a month, and some will wean and keep for 2 months. Okay, so it just shows you what kind of ranches are doing. So we call this wean on the truck. You wean them and put them on the truck. Keep them for up to a month, keep them for up to 2 months, or at least a month up to 2 months. Keep them for 2 to 3 months. So may not be interesting to you, may be kind of boring to you, but I'm just here to tell you that the small operators, and we know there's a bunch of them, most of them, over half of them, wean the day they take their calves to the sale. Okay, about 10% will keep them, and then very few keep them longer than that. And again, not very, these calves need to go. These calves need to go. Okay, so what's this 20% down here? That 20% are the ranches who will stocker their own calves. And so King Ranch does this a little bit. So they raise the calves, they wean the calves, and then they run their own stocker operation, and then these calves right here would go from the ranch to the feed yard because they're being stockered for over 4 months. Okay, they're being stockered for over 4 months, so that's kind of important. If a ranch has grass, it may decide to keep the calves, especially if the price isn't good. They'll decide to keep the calves and run their own stocker operation. And so that's what this big number right here means. Okay, that's what that big number right here means. Okay, and we also see, there's some guys that do this here. Okay, I've done this myself. If I got a lot of rain and if hay's cheap, I will wait. I will wean my calves and wait a few 4 months and sell them as heavy stockers and try to get that better price. Okay, try to get that better price. So I might keep a calf at my house if I got grass or if hay's reasonably priced. I might keep that calf and sell him as an 8 weight rather than sell him as a 5 weight. I've done that myself. So I'm not, I just want to give you a little bit of perspective here. Finally, this last figure, 5.14, looks at the profitability of doing this, of keeping your calves when you should have sold them in October. Spring-born calves, you should have sold them in October weighing 550 pounds, but you didn't. You kept them till the following February. Okay? That's not 4 months later. There's no way a calf can gain 300 pounds in 4 months. Okay? So this would be showing the value of adding weight as a stocker calf. Okay? I'm very confident that's what that means, because for a steer to gain 300 pounds in November, December, January, they'd have to be gaining 3 pounds a day. And so you'd have to be pouring the feed to them. Okay? You'd have to be pouring the feed to them. So most of the time, going from 550 to 850 would take about a year. See if that makes sense. So we're adding 300 pounds, divide by 365, that's gaining about 0.8 of a pound a day, or 0.8 pounds a day. So you can see most stocker people buy a 550 pound steer and they sell that steer at 850, ready to go to the feed yard. You can make anywhere from 50 up to 250. Now this is a stage period of time. These are years, by the way. 1994, 95, 95, 96. So here's the years when beef was in short supply. Those folks that, instead of selling that steer at 550 pounds, if they kept him till he weighed 850, they advanced him another $500 here. So those are different. Those are different times. That's when we had severe drought and we had less calf numbers. Okay. So, going from a 550, selling in February at 850. Now, if you're a stocker operation, that would be a full year later. I guess, however, though, you could pour the feed to him. Like, you could put this little burger in a pen and feed him really well, and he could gain 300 pounds in November, December, January. Well, that'd be hard to do. That's 100 pounds a month. I don't think you can do that. I stick with my original point, and I really don't like this. That's a pretty short window. That's a pretty short window going from October to February. So I know I'm probably I'm confusing the heck out of you. But the way you can look at this is, what's the value of an 850 pound calf versus a 550 pound calf? What's the value difference? And so, looking at the big scheme of things, it's between $100 and $500 more value in that, not value or worth. So an 850 pound calf, it can be up to $500 difference in price, or as little as about $100 difference in price, going from 94 all the way to 16. Okay, so they're worth about $100 a head more. So if you're thinking about running stocker calves, I'm just telling you, if you're thinking about running stocker calves, ignore the months here for a minute. Let's say they're weaned in October. I'm not saying when they're sold. Okay, so let's say we want to run our own stocker calves. If we draw a line right across here, if we can afford to run our own stocker calves, and we put on another 300 pounds, going from 550 to 850, that calf is worth $100 more in most years, at a minimum. Some years it could be worth 250. Some years it could be worth 500. So you have to watch the market. Okay? But at a minimum, one more time, at a minimum, if you wanted to add weight to calves after weaning, and you're going to add 300 pounds, you'd get $100 more for every single calf. All right? Very good.